Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. You can follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, on to the show.
Today, Marc, Blount, and I talk with our current Erie County executive, Brenton Davis, who is running for re-election. Thanks for being with us today, Brenton.
Glad to be here.
I have a practice in my interviews where I ask people to tell us a little bit about themselves before we get going. So I was wondering if you could give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of your life story.
Boy, just the abridged version. So I grew up in Crawford County. My dad was a diesel mechanic. My mom delivered newspapers. I think I had a pretty traditional country upbringing. We grew up baling hay and feeding the cows and doing all that fun stuff, playing sports. Went off to the service, got 23 years in the military. 23 years. I'm sitting in the inactive reserve, so I could still be recalled, but I really couldn't continue my reserve career once I really got into the breadth of this office and what it really entails. You don't have time for much else. It's truly a 24/7 calling, and things go bump in the night. You have to be prepared to respond. Ran my construction company for about 20 years and did my reserve time and got a undergraduate from Edinburgh and a master's in economic development from Penn State. So, that's kind of the Reader's Digest abridged version of
That
kind
helps.
of my pathway to the county executive's office. It was never I never grew up and said, wow, boy, I'd really like to be a politician. It was never really a thought, but I think much like being a pastor in a church, it's a calling. When you're called and you're led to something, I never expected to be here, but here I am.
We're going to be talking about a bunch of different issues in a few minutes, but I'm also really curious as to why people in general do this thing, politics, because it's not always easy and fun. And it's way more work than most people know. So what did you get? How did you decide to do this?
Well, to me, I think it's a calling. To me, I'm reminded of like Isaiah 6:8, here I am, send me, And I've been a firm believer of that. You know what I mean? Even in construction or the military, I never asked any one of my soldiers or workers to do something that I wasn't willing to do. So, to me, I just looked around in the community, and I think there's a lot of folks, I think in the social media era, that look around and they really like to complain. You don't complain unless you're willing to do. And that's part of, I think, my upbringing, that I looked around this community, I saw the managed decline. The decline that's still very much evident right out here in front of the East Side Renaissance. And we see this no matter where you're at, whether you're in 11th, 10th and Parade, or whether you're out in Corey or, in Concord Township, where we're just replacing some dilapidated stormwater culverts. So to me, it was really a calling. And folks don't really truly encompass, and whether that's being a pastor at a church, whether that's being a corrections officer like Marc, it's nobody truly understands the weight, the bigger picture that you have to understand in this position, and nothing is ever cut and dry. This position is truly, it's highly important, it's highly undefined, and every executive is much like the pilot of an aircraft. You're going to fly it differently. Some are more aggressive, some are more reserved, some are more seasoned, and some are trying to learn as they fly. The successes and failures of our community, really hinge upon the day-to-day judgment, the wisdom and decisions. Whether that's being a good steward of your own household, being a deacon of your church, or being a county executive.
You brought up an interesting point. My first thought, when we do these interviews, we have the candidate, and then you have the one that is actually serving. And both I find interesting is how you said, how we approached it was we asked you about politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the calling is politics.
No.
I think the calling is service.
Yep.
And I think that's what's left out of politics. We're public servants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the calling. However, when we get in it, the politics turns us into the compromises, the whatever, the system, the whatever. And what has been your biggest, as a candidate, you were a candidate at one time, and you got in, And once you got in, what was the difference? I mean, we have ideas. We have the idealists. What was the hardest transition for you?
Well, I mean, to me, I ran once before. I ran once at 32 years old. I lost to Art Olajeri in the previous primary by 212 votes. But what that enabled me to do was really see where my weaknesses were. Man, like the future of our community is going to live and die on economic development. I mean, it hinges on everything. If you don't have a good, strong economy, you have nothing. You have no opportunity. You have no jobs. So, I mean, that's when I went away. You know, I mean, I'd studied county government at that point for probably 2 years coming into the first campaign. And then I never stopped campaigning for the next 4, campaigning and learning while I got my master's in economic development from Penn State. Even after nearly 3/4 of a decade studying this office, and I mean, I've had sit downs with every living county executive. But to me, the greatest challenge is despite having 7 or 8 years of studying this office, attending council meetings, attending board authority commission meetings, getting to know the nuts and bolts. That first day in office on January 3rd, when you walk in that office and the walls are bare, the desk is bare, the positions aren't filled, and you sit down and you close that door behind you and you realize, like, what now? You know, and I mean, I think like anything, you know, and I mean, in the military, I was most recently in charge of 3 different states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware as a commissioned officer. You know, so I mean, I've held high level leadership, you know, at a much greater scale, but there was always a colonel or a general that I could turn to. And in this job, there isn't. I mean, the buck truly stops with the county executive. You can have advisors, you can have mentors, and you would be a fool to not heed that wisdom. You know, I mean, I call on all kinds of different advisors and mentors from all different political spectrums. Even my director of administration's 3-term Democratic Mayor Joe Sinnott. Like, people never saw that coming. Like, why would I, as a Republican on paper, choose a Democrat as my right-hand person? It's the wisdom, it's the experience, it's that temperament to make us, 1, bipartisan, but 2, successful. He was successful in this business. I mean, you can prepare, but you're never truly prepared for the true weight.
So I get that completely, because when I got to my job first time out of seminary, I had that same reaction. Now what? What am I doing here? So I get that. I wonder what it is that makes you capable of doing the job going forward, even when you're not sure about this, that, or the other thing. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think in part of it's instinct. You know, I mean, can you feel what's going on in the community? You know, do you have enough intellect to decipher, like, the truth from the falsehoods? You know, and much to your point, Mark, is like, it's the politics. I mean, in this business, somebody will give you advice thinking that you'll think, hey, this is a person I can trust. When in reality, they're just trying to lead you down a pathway to more funding for X, Y, and Z that personally benefits them. You know, like, you can't be a naive person. I mean, if you are, you're going to get taken advantage of, and the taxpayers are going to lose, and we're going to see many more of the failures repeat themselves that we've already seen. But, I mean, the challenge is moving forward. I mean, it's tenfold. You know, I mean, you've got to be aware. I mean, even things like the Marcello Woodard shooting. You know, there's nothing written that says, where are the words that say, much like a pastor doing a funeral or dealing with somebody in grief and loss. I mean, there's no manual for what are the right words. And I mean, I think really you just got to look into your heart. And again, it goes back to service. I think if you're there for the right reasons, you're not there to enrich yourself. I mean, I did a couple $1 million a year typically in construction. And I mean, I left all of that. You know, I left all of that to come serve because, again, like, whom shall I send? Here I am, send me. You know, if you're not willing to answer the call, much like police or fire or anybody like that, I was a lifelong independent. You know, I just knew the math didn't add up for running against Kathy Dahlkemper, Art Olajeri. So, I mean, I entered the Republican primary because it was I think, a more strategic pathway to inherently in hopes of defeating an incumbent.
You brought up the Marcello thing, and I guess I would be remiss, being part of the community that I'm in, to ask you this. Okay, probation and parole county, they're under your office. or no?
No, so they're under the courts. So I mean that's the big thing, you know. So I mean the Woodard fatality was a lot closer to me. One of his cousins, I've worked with him for probably 10 or 12 years roofing, and one of his other cousins has operated some equipment for me. So I mean, like for me, it's like, man, like I know these people. You know what I mean? Like we've bled together, we've sweated together. You know, we've gotten to know each other. I mean, you know, I know their kids. I mean, that's a hard thing. You know, like any tragedy. But no, at the end of the day, all that falls under the courts. You know, and that's where I've tried to guide these folks. You know, and just saying, hey, look, like if you want to be impactful, like as the old saying goes, you got to bark up the right tree, you know, and all of that falls under the courts. Probation, that has, I mean, we fund it as a county, but in Pennsylvania, any duly elected office, like I can't go tell the district attorney what to do. I can't tell the judges what to do. I can't tell county council, or I can't come down here to the Erie School Board at the lowest level and tell somebody what to do. They're duly elected, and that's the way a Commonwealth operates. You know, so the ways that we have to influence that would be things like body cameras. Like, I mean, I can propose funding, and I can kind of say, hey guys, like if I put, let's just say hypothetically $100,000 into the budget to purchase body cameras to make sure that one, it not only protects people in the street, but I'll bet you and you know, I don't want to speak out of school because there's a pending investigation, but in generalities, I would think that like the investigators, those parole agents that were involved in that shooting, and the Woodard family or anybody in this situation wish they would have had a better digital record of what occurred there. And if they had, I honestly think that like those cameras protect. I mean, we use them. We use them in our county jail. You know, I mean, we use them in our county jail, and like to me, like I think most of the officers at first were like, nah, we don't want to wear this. But now they realize like the false accusations that inmates can make. They're like, heck yeah, play back the tape. I never said that. And they're exonerated. So the only thing I can really do is say, put forward and offer funding, but I can't say you will wear these or you will, you know, make this purchase. I mean, I can only work with these folks, you know, to try to improve that system. And that's kind of the best you can do as county executive, is kind of just using the bully pulpit to shape the system and strategically make offerings for other elected officials to say, hey, let's build a bridge here.
Your role with the budget with county council, I mean, like it seems like sometimes you feel, hey, it should go down this path, the DEI monies or whatever that's been appropriated through council or whatever, or and improved. But you had an opinion about how that money should be spent and the amount that should be spent. What's your challenge? What's your take on that? What is your version of that situation?
So are you saying just the budget process in general with
council?
council?
The amount that was approved total for it. And
so I think what we've talked about this, Marc and I, that you were critical of Diverse Erie, the project, and
100%,
and then held back those funds that were allocated by the council.
So I think there's a lot of, so really to get to the crux of that, you have to understand, one, what happened, and two, how it lawfully must happen. So it's much like, say for instance, you as a pastor of a church said, hey, we're going to do X this summer. Well, then a new pastor comes in through the winter. It doesn't matter what the previous pastor said. Like, you can't promise money into the future. And that's what Kathy Dahlkemper essentially did, said, hey, we're going to give it $10 million. Well, let's forget that her number two guy that used to sit in Joe Sinnott's role got created a golden parachute making $150,000 a year with more vacation days paid than anybody in county government. You know, if this is truly about the people, let's put the money out with the people. Let's not create a golden parachute for our number two. So, I mean, there was a lot of...
The Diverse Erie money, though, wasn't about that.
100% was
How
about
was it
that.
about, and I'm just speaking out of ignorance here, how is it about paying that guy?
Because he's paid out of those funds. So they created the Diverse Erie Commission and set Gary Lee, that's currently the director. And granted, he's a Republican, he's a friend of mine, but you know, to me, the paradigms, we can agree to disagree on anything. But if it's truly about helping people, to me, my philosophy was, how do we leverage it? And so like, why spend dollar for dollar? And there's no data with the diverse area even to date that shows there's been a major return on investment. There's been a lot of people making money in terms of salaries, administrative fee. I mean, the vast majority of that money has gone to support the overhead of an office that I believed should not have existed. So take, for example, the parallel to that was the municipal gap fund. We were able to take the same ARPA dollars. So ARPA dollars funded diverse Erie. ARPA dollars were redirected, and I wouldn't even say redirected because you can't. That would be like, for instance, the next executive saying, well, I have to do what Davis said in the previous term if there was to be a turnover in this office. That's not true. Like, you have the autonomy to do whatever you see fit in your budget proposal. So there's a lot of folks that got made promises by a previous executive who bailed on the seat and obviously didn't stay in this seat. So those promises were just an empty promise from somebody. There's no commitments. There was none of that. And I think there was a lot of stories around, oh, this funding was this or it was that. No, we went through the lawful process, through the budget, and allocated to things like the municipal gap fund, replacing the failing infrastructure. But the point is I look at things based on data. What is the greatest return for our entire society? And it's no different than, say, somebody's 401k. If I was your financial advisor and, Marc was a competing financial advisor, and I'm offering you something that, it looks like we're kind of losing money every time you give it to me. Or Marc says, hey, look, man, here's all these clients that I have over here, and they're making 400 to 500% returns every time with your money. Well, who are you going to put your money with? You're going to put your money with that 400 to 500% return. This is no different. Diverse Erie was losing money. I mean, there was a lot of administrative issues in terms of paperwork, self-dealing early on that we saw organizations that sat on the board. It was the same old who's who that got themselves on the board and were giving themselves money. Well, any of the folks from these populations that I know are saying, hey, like, how are you going to let this stuff happen? Like, hold up. When is this money going to get down to the street and help us? How is this money helping us? It's the same people that have made the same promises for decades, and the money never seems to help us. So, I mean, to me, that's fighting for everybody. So at the end of the day, I think there's different pathways to providing opportunities. It's funding things like the community college like we have to provide the opportunities for somebody that wants to work, that wants to better their lives, as opposed to, say, some of the investments that we saw were into businesses that didn't exist and still don't exist. So, I mean, there's $10,000 or $15,000 checks out there that went to an individual in these communities that the business still doesn't exist and we don't have the paperwork.
So ultimately, who has oversight of the budget of the DEI that person?
So they do.
Who sets
now.
that?
So they do. So diversity. So anything under a board, authority, or commission, it's supervised by the county executive, because when something goes sideways, they're going to come from my head, or at least explanations, right? Or whoever sits in this seat. Diverse Erie is its own board. So they have their own appointments. I have 2 appointments. The other rest of members of county council have 1, and they make their own decisions. So that money, when it went to them, and again, when they sued me to release the funds, it wasn't that I was opposed to the funding going out. What I was looking for, and ultimately was awarded in court, was controls. Controls and, what can you do with this money that you're required to make the reports that you weren't making? Because at the end of the day, the federal government has laws and guidelines for us. So if, let's just say hypothetically, DEI gives Marc a grant for, I don't know, let's say this podcast equipment, $5,000 or whatever. Well, he doesn't fill out the paperwork. We spend the money. I don't have the reports. The feds come back to Erie County taxpayers and go, wait a minute. You don't have any paperwork for this money. Now you owe us $5,000. So you gave $5,000 to Marc, and then you lost another $5,000 on the back end. So when they weren't doing what they needed to do, like, I'm not going to give you any more money. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get right with the church, as they say. And I mean, that's ultimately what that was about. So, I mean, there's just a lot of folks, I think with the ARPA money, obviously, and that was a game of moving goalposts too with the feds. It kept changing. It seemed like every 3 months, they're like, oh, here's another set of rules. And now 100-yard field became 120 and became 130.
So for clarity, the executive director awards that commission or that group their budget, or does county council?
So they were awarded one-time money So they have one-time money that was in our ARPA budget. So that was ultimately, and then once that check goes away, the only oversight that we have of them is one, through our board appointments. Like we have members that we appoint that represent, the community's interests on the board. And then the other point is the county executive, I have to oversee all 58 boards, authorities, and commissions, things like ECRA. I mean, this is on top of all the other stuff you got to do. It's a truly expansive job. And in a $600 million, almost $600 million a year budget, it's probably less than 0.5% of what we do, per year. And it's unfortunate that we had to spend that amount of time, but it's that moonshot moment for a lot of people in a lot of communities. And I told Gary and I told my appointees on the board, if you leverage this money, you can turn, and I think they ultimately ended up getting, $6.5 million total. I said, there's no reason why that $6.5 million shouldn't be turned into 25 if you leverage it with other sources, like we did with the municipal gap fund. You get 2 or 3, 4 funders, but look, the city of Erie, the vast majority and the lion's share of this funding went into the city of Erie. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 that went outside the city of Erie. That's not a countywide initiative. And even when I went to like Mayor Schember and all these, folks that sit on city council, I'm like, hey, well, we're in for $6.5 million. How much are you guys in for? If you truly talk about standing on business when it comes to diversity, it comes to turning your own streets around, East Side Renaissance, things of this nature, why didn't you allocate any money? You know what I mean? And it's kind of hard for me to ask county taxpayers to double down on an investment when even the city of Erie is not ponying up, or, you're not finding other funders like we have with other programs. So, no matter how much maybe you think something's a good idea, at the end of the day, I look at myself kind of like a financial advisor, like a broker. I've got to provide the greatest return, or at least mitigate the least amount that we can lose in certain situations.
So are you for DEI?
For the concept of DEI, I'm not.
What is your concept of it?
Well, I think simply by one, I think choosing winners and losers just simply based on race or gender. I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
Is that what your definition of DEI is? Is DEI affirmative action? Is that your definition?
That's exactly what I just said. I think it's picking winners and losers based on race as opposed to taking care of all folks equitably.
And I know there's certainly room for discussion and disagreement on this issue. I look at DEI as attempting to address historical wrongs, and instead of preferring the person based on race or gender, understanding that so many of our jobs go to people like you and I, Brenton, white guys, as opposed to very deserving people who are people of color or who are women. I think all you have to do is listen to some of the attacks on Kamala Harris or on the new Supreme Court Justice what's her last name? Ketanji Jackson, that they got those jobs only because they're black or because they're women. And I don't see it that way. I think what a DEI is attempting to do is to redress historical wrongs and provide opportunities for particular classes of people who have, in my opinion, been very much suppressed and oppressed, and give them the opportunity to rise up. I spent a lot of time studying race stuff over the last few years, and I can't find a way to say that these minorities have not been marginalized and oppressed.
To me, but I think the thing to do is I think you lose sight of what's important in a community. I think to me, like, I don't look at any one of these problems. I don't look at homeless. And I look at things through the lens that I have to as a county executive. There's no excuse anywhere for anyone in Erie County. If you want to do better, we've put things in place for you to do that. And I don't want to say, well, we're favoring this demographic over that demographic, or because you're a woman or because you're a minority. Create opportunities. Like, look, like I said, my dad was a diesel mechanic, not a wealthy background. My mom delivered newspapers. I forget, she made 2 cents a newspaper or something to get delivered. Like,
Hey, I delivered newspapers.
Like, listen, yeah, right. And I mean, I clawed my way up, and like I didn't come from a wealthy background. My grandparents had on both sides had an 8th grade education, So I mean, to me, I mean, you can be sympathetic about things, but to me, I look at it as like I wanted something in life, and I started, I was born into a trailer park, like to a single mom at the point, we didn't have a ton of opportunities.
I would suggest this to you in that regard, that even though, my grandfather, my dad didn't have a college education. He was the first one in his family that went to college but didn't graduate. He was a draftsman. My mom didn't work. We were lucky we were not wealthy either. Blue collar. My grandfather on my mom's side was a Teamster who organized the Teamsters in Pittsburgh in the 40s and 50s alongside Jimmy Hoffa. There's a long history of blue collarness, of working our way through. What I think I've realized as I've come to this place in my life, I'm a lot older than you, my kids' age. So if I say disrespectful things, that's why. You're young. But I've learned, I think, that despite the fact that we weren't rich, I had a head start in many ways. That people who look like Doug were not going to have the same opportunities as me. And so they had to work harder. And I get that you're a hard worker. I think I was as well. But we're trying to, in some respects, dig them out of that hole by giving them opportunity to start a business or whatever. So for me, DEI is an attempt to make it more possible for the Black people in our town, for the women. My daughter is the chief operating officer of the actuarial department at Johns Hopkins. She looked around her when she got there and recognized, ain't no women here. 75% men, and most of them are white guys. It's not because Black people aren't smart enough or don't work hard enough. It's because the opportunities were less there than they are for you and I. Nobody's question. I'm just going to leave it at that. So I think that's just something that I've come to along the way, that I think folks need help sometimes, because they started out in a deep hole and I started out on level ground. Now, some people started out higher than you and I, and they had it a lot easier than you and I, but recognizing where our relative starting points were, I think, is an important aspect.
I think at the end of the day, you're talking about different levels. And I think just even the nature of that conversation, I mean, you even bring up Doug because we have this conversation all the time. I mean, we hear this, well, I hired Doug, they're on economic development because, that's the token Black guy.
Right.
That is highly offensive.
It is, absolutely.
I hired him because he was the best and most qualified for that position. And I had no idea who he was or what he looked like. I looked at his resume, I talked to him on the phone, and I said, this is the guy that needs to be on my team. I don't care who you are, what race, color, creed, and maybe that's a difference of generations too.
I don't
think so. Being a little bit younger, like our generation, like I think we look at the constructs of race a heck of a lot differently because I think we are a lot further. We didn't witness some of that systematic, like civil rights era, Martin Luther King, like those are pages in a history book, much like 9/11 is the 20-year-olds today, So, I mean, to me, I look at this through this. I think it's it's insulting, I think, to people that are women or to color to say, hey, listen, that you need these extra points. Like, I think our generation's more focused on just treat people equally. When I build in opportunities, say into the community college, like, yeah, you look at it through a lens for different demographics that maybe come from, take like the allied healthcare program, that we created at the community college. You've got folks that can go to school, get paid tuition, get paid a decent wage while they go to school, and they're guaranteed a job. We've got $5.5 million that we put forward for childcare initiatives. I mean, does that recognize those things? I don't think, like you said, the affluent Fairview doctor's kid, are they utilizing the community college and free healthcare or childcare? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But I think we need to just provide opportunities. And I don't care what walk of life you come from, what your story is. Like, if you take that step forward, whether you're an inmate in our county jail working towards getting their GED, or connecting them with an employer, the community college when they get out, whether you're unhoused. To me, like, these problems in county government, there's not a white problem, there's not a black problem. Like, I can tell you the demographics that matter are the one key metric that we can affect is poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the key driver. And the cure to that is economic opportunity. The cure to that is educational opportunities. So, I mean, to me, I don't care whether you're a minority kid or a white kid, a boy, girl, or however you affiliate and whatever in between. There's opportunities here for you to better yourself if you want to work, if you want to go to the community college. That's free tuition. I mean, we would put $4 million guaranteed at a minimum, and then we put another 2.5 on top of it, which we leverage with 4 other health systems. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we've been able to do. So, I mean, to me, I just, maybe that's a generational thing where I just reject those philosophies. Like,
that's great. But one of the things that you have to understand is we're not talking about you. We're talking about a system that has been set up and is systemically repressive to blacks.
But I would argue that we are talking about me, because from the bully pulpit, I drive programs.
You have opportunity to make a difference.
And that's, and you do. And I think for me, no matter who it is, if you want to work, here's the opportunities. But I can tell you the efforts that we've made compared to, say, the allied healthcare nursing program or radiological tech or PCT or whatever, has a far greater metric of success of bringing people up the economic mobility ladder. For every class that we graduate, that's an $8 million return to the taxpayers. That's money in the economy. That's people that are able to buy a house, that are able to build that generational wealth. Things like DEI initiatives through Diverse Erie that, you can give me a bad rap on it because of the way maybe the newspaper wants to stir the controversy to sell the newspapers. But at the end of the day, that $10,000 camera that we bought for XYZ business that didn't exist because they're a minority that now we have no paper on, that the business isn't up and running, they're not answering the phone. Where's the camera? There is no business to show for it.
So
and now the taxpayers are going to foot the bill. To me, that's a wasted opportunity for somebody that could have done something.
That you're not so much in opposition to sort of the idea of giving people in minority groups, although women aren't in a minority group, but giving those people opportunity. You don't like the way it was handled.
100%. 100%.
And so that argument.
I mean, I think we can guarantee, or at least to the best of our ability, because everybody's challenges are different. I mean, heck, even growing up in the same household, look at how many of us got siblings. I mean, we've all got that one sibling that was like the golden child that just everything they touch seems to go great. And then some of us got the families where they're the doctor's kid and they're still living in mom and dad's basement. I mean, like, you can guarantee, or you can't really guarantee. I mean, you can try to make a starting line even, but you can't guarantee the outcomes.
I think the problem is kind of like centered in whether we agree or don't in what you just said, outcomes. Because here's the issue. These programs wasn't designed by minorities. These programs were designed by people that felt there was a problem that existed and they were remedies. My point is like the veterans points. Because if I hear you outright, you want to eliminate the veterans points, because what you're telling me is we shouldn't recognize anything outside of just the merit for the job. However, no one's against the veterans points when you come to a civil service job, that you don't have no statistical point to say or data that says that makes them a better employee, but they get the points. It's a remedy, and I'm not against it. However, when we come up with, not we, but when the system comes up with a remedy, whether it's 40 acres or and a mule, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's DEI, you go in or reconstruction. When they start working, it seems like there's always this pushback and villainization of the program. And what I'm saying is, if you say equal opportunity employer, like everybody's against this word DEI or whatever, or some people. The Republican Party seems to be against DEI based off of merit and content, all that. However, what's the difference between what that says versus, I heard Trump say this, he's for equal opportunity. What's the difference in the two in concept? Because every employer, the state or whatever, you got that thing on that wall that no one looks at in the lunchroom or whatever. And it says, we are proudly an equal opportunity employer. No one associates that with quotas or anything else.
What you're confusing is federal law. But I would push back a little bit in the sense that when you compare...
You're saying equal opportunity is federal law?
It's federal law. Like I said, this is less than 0.5% of a budget. And that's water under the bridge. These folks are going to live and die by their own sword. They've already shown it. I would push back a little bit on the fact of the veterans points. I would say those veterans earned that status because they went and did X amount of service to achieve those points. It wasn't just... In the
draft era, I agree with you. But when you volunteer and we pay for college, wait, you're saying the same thing. I'm saying kind of respectfully. I'm saying you signed up voluntarily for it. You receive bonuses. You receive a free education, and I'm all for that.
Yep.
And that's a bootstrap that was given to you. That's an extra bootstrap. It's not just about serving your country.
But
you got some extra
my
benefits.
My point is
that taxpayers pay for.
You're comparing false premises. I don't want to get into that. Like veterans points, you get that, the 5 or 10 points, whatever you get, it's because you went and served. You took that step
voluntarily,
forward. Right? And that's fine. But here's the thing.
Were you paid?
100, but it has absolutely no. When you're talking about equal opportunities,
so racism, being discriminated against, that's not something that should be remedied or addressed. But you volunteering for a job for serving your country, I'll give you that. You in a draft era that was created because people that were drafted came back and they wasn't getting hired. Well, that's not the climate no more.
What I am taking away from this is that you're not deciding to hire people who are only white.
One, to be clear, the county executive, I do very little hiring other than guys like Doug. He was a hand-picked selection of mine.
And by the way, to the listener, Doug is sitting here. He's a tall, very good-looking black man.
don't pump him up too much. We're not going to get to hear the end of that.
I don't want people to.
He'll want to be on a billboard.
People to be on the same page we are. But to move on from DEI, so there are some stylistic questions about your work. And you actually talked to the newspaper about this not too long ago. And I think that sort of style aspect has affected a number of pieces of what you've done. So to get into that, I want to go over here first. I want to ask you 2 basic questions as you reflect on your term so far. What would you think, or what do you think are the things that the accomplishments you feel best about, and where might you have made some missteps along the way that, in hindsight, you could say, I would change the way I did that?
I think first and foremost, the executive that I am 4 years into it is totally different than the executive that I was when we talked about going in there and closing that door, and you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do now?
So what have you done that you feel good about?
I think there's a lot of things. Like the allied health. Being able to create a program that costs the taxpayers virtually nothing, that the health systems support. It creates opportunity for anyone, no matter who they are, to step forward and better their life. Our work with the homeless. The fact we got a national award this year for our work with Our Neighbor's Place at the homeless shelter. Anybody that walks around this city specific, and it's not that there aren't rural poor and there aren't rural homeless, because it 100% exists. We still have about 1,250 homeless youth in Erie County, and that's kids that are sleeping in cars and subpar structures and things of that nature. But for the first time in Erie County history, there wasn't a single person in Erie County that had to sleep on the streets. We didn't lose a single life this year due to the cold, because we were able to transition that old work release building, a place of what was once meant for incarceration and despair, and we turned it into a place of hope, and it was sitting empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to pay for that, utilizing lease space to private sector urinalysis company.
Another part of the building
that offsets the costs. So we're able to do that at no cost. You can't get any better government than that unless you can figure out a way to get yourself,
to make money off it.
To make money. But then I think there's some philosophical paradigms that you'd have to question if you're making money off of homeless people.
But what about, so one aspect of that is the Tiny Homes Project.
Yep.
Where do we stand on the tiny homes
So it's
project
still
right
moving.
now?
So we just mapped that out. All the utilities and things of that nature are mapped out. Working with BIU and
Two aspects. One is, why did we not submit paperwork?
see that's a complete and total misnomer, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And to me, folks want to try to and Marc hit this point. This is about politics. This is the BS stuff about this. So tiny houses. I'm a professional builder for 20 years. Like, I know this stuff inside, outside, backwards, and forwards. Tiny homes are not in the current international building, or weren't in the 2018 building code. Well, then halfway through this process, the city adopted a new building code. There's only like 2 pages in the current international residential code that really dictates what's a tiny house. And this all comes, the crux of this argument comes down to one thing. I mean, you get lower level bureaucrats that just want to add bureaucracy to something just for the sake of it without understanding, one, the codes, and two, the requirements. The second, and it all comes down to, we want you to put a foundation under this. Name one shed, and let's call it, I mean, these are shed-like structures. They're on skids. I know people that put cars in sheds. That's going to weigh more than a couple people and some belongings. So I mean, if we're looking at this, and that's where I've really pushed back as the county executive, is that common sense lens of what really makes sense, what drives at the root cause. Do I want to spend $300,000 on pouring concrete foundations that I damn well know they don't need? They don't need it. They don't need it. There's no structural reason. There's no, I mean, and they've been sitting out there for eight months or whatever, waiting for us to get the site work done. If they would have sunk into that ground as wet as this spring was, they'd be in the mud. They're not. They're sitting still on top of the grass where we left them. So we could just as easily put down a slab of gravel, and the cost of putting foundations under those single stories would be another $300,000.
Is that the crux of the
Of the argument.
in regards to what's required?
100%.
Okay. So it's just mostly about the foundation.
So the difference is, but here's the crux of the argument, and this is why we've taken the amount of time that we have, because one, the second you put it on a foundation, now you're subject to all of the building code. Well, you're not gonna, no matter what you do mathematically, you're not gonna take a 10-foot by 30-foot space and make it meet building code. The book is, 8 inches thick. If you really want, I can find a problem anywhere. I could find, 25 code violations without leaving this chair if I really wanted to. Those two windows aren't egress size. Like the room that we're in now would not meet the building code. Our windows
we don't want to talk about that.
100%. Well, it's grandfathered in anyway.
I'm just teasing.
But, it's just the simple fact of the matter. Even BIU himself doesn't have a handicap entrance going into their own building and they're commercial. But the point is, to me, it lacks common sense, because if we spent $300,000 on unnecessary foundations, that's 10 other houses that we're not able to build to actually provide services to support people.
So let me
it's
push
those
on.
opportunities we talk about.
Yeah.
That's denying.
Let me push on.
Yep.
So in addition to the code stuff and the paperwork stuff regarding the tiny houses, two things that raised concerns were the Fairview Township Industrial Park thing and what's currently still going on with the library. Here's a take on you, just from sitting here for 40 minutes with you. You're no nonsense in many ways, that you see what you see, and you want to get these things done. You're a get-doner kind of person. Does that sometimes get in the way of getting things done? So I think, for example, the library thing could have got done if it had been done without contention.
Well, let's be clear. The library thing is done, and we're cutting the ribbon on October 4th.
Except for this. What happens if the courts rule against you?
It's not going to happen. It's absolutely 100% not going to happen. And listen, there's nothing you can do. So let's just say the four of us sitting at this table, I say, hey, guys, let's go get lunch after this. Let's have a beer. We're not going to agree on where the best place to go to eat is, even amongst four of us. So that's the same thing with the library. That's the same thing with Pleasant Ridge. And let's be clear, I didn't do that unilaterally. I didn't do any of these things unilaterally. These all happened by not one, but sometimes 2 or 3 votes of county council to get that done. So to me, it's innovation. Nobody would have thought, hey, Kathy Dahlkemper sure didn't think, let's use this empty building to house homeless and serve a point. Well, I went down to that library, and when we didn't think this project was going to happen, we scoured the shores from New York to Ohio. New York to Ohio to try to find a place on the water. Well, I just happened to, have a building under my control, and I say, look, here's and I equated the storage room that's now the water lab as much like the kitchen drawer that we all have, full of crap that we're never going to look at. Well, that was kind of that catch-all room. There really wasn't a whole lot. So, I mean, the public hasn't lost anything. And I mean, I would invite you to come, because anybody that's seen this, the homeschools, the school field trips, I would even argue folks like Judy Lynch that are on the other side, she has offered to be our first volunteer to help do tours and do educational programs through that.
I think the project itself, I talked to lots of people, and the project itself does not have critics. The critique is about whether it should be in the library, that for me is an argument that I don't even know where I stand.
And here's the thing: it's legal, it's lawful, it went through the process, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. You will always have a critic. I mean, even take my political opponent on the other side of the aisle. Supporting the Democrats in all these lawsuits against me. Well, a lot of folks don't realize one of their lawsuits is suing me because, one, they usurped the process. Two, in the budget process, to either override my veto, they struck it from the agenda, they didn't vote on it. That's the crux of all these lawsuits. But one item in particular is $1.2 million in revenue. Had I let that stand and just, you know what, guys? You totally violated our process. I'm just going to go ahead and send this $1.2 million back. Well, what that would have done is kept 110 kids from being adopted by 74 loving families last year. Like, that's the reality when you have a misinformed council. And that is what it is. And I will stand on business every time when it comes to things like that. When you know that it's wrong, you stand up and fight. And I mean, that's important. I'll tell you, if you put a weak leader in this office, other communities, other politicians, even county council will eat your lunch. And we've been far more successful because I'm willing. It's not that I stand up and fight all day long. I've gotten a lot of things done, but I think it's funny. Out of 4 years, if you can only point to two things, a farm field that, hey, mind you, we've got the McCain Business Park that welcomed it with open arms. And mind you, county council voted on it. We got a whole new council that came in and rescinded the lease. Like, you can't predict those things. We had that council on board. They voted for it. A new election came, Drexel, Copeland, all these came on, and they reversed it. They had the 4 votes to reverse it. So, I mean, they're dragging our community. The folks that say they want opportunity are dragging a community back into the mud. And then, playing some games with the mowing and the different things. Look at that, guys. Like, this is what's wrong out here. It's all politics. If that's the only two things they can point at, we moved the business park. First business park in 25 years. We talk about real DEI. We talk about and I don't believe in DEI. I believe in upward economic mobility. No matter who you are, if you want to show up, you want to get an education, you want to work, like, listen, I want to create the opportunities that are there for your kids and your grandkids where, in the days of Martin Luther King, where you're judged not by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. And I would add the quality of your work ethic. Like, that is what should be rewarded. So I mean, looking at those things, these are the opportunities that move Erie County into the future for all of our kids and our grandkids. I've got my business. I've got my retirement. I'm not doing this because I need a paycheck. I'm doing this, to Marc's point. You're called to serve. You might not like the approaches, but I can 100% tell you, like, when you step into this office, if you're not ready to get punched in the chin every single day or in the back of figuratively speaking,
I get it.
But I can tell you, that is 100%. I mean, it's just like a kid walking around on the street. If you're not a little bit tough, like, you're gonna get taken advantage of, and government is 100% no different. And when it comes to somebody fighting for your future, for the future of your kids and your grandkids, I think people want a fighter in their corner.
I don't have a problem with the toughness aspect of things. I mean, to a lesser degree, much lesser degree, pastors have to deal with conflict and criticism as well,
100%.
Especially in today's church and world.
Some people that know me, they wouldn't forgive me if I didn't ask you this. And this is just a yes or no. Do you believe we've arrived in Erie County? I'm not going to say in this country. In Erie County, at the point where it's about the content of your character and not the color of your skin? Yes or no?
I don't think that can be encompassed by a yes or no question. And I think everybody's perspective
Do you
on
believe
that.
we're there?
But I mean, to me, I don't think
Because
there's-
you used it.
I don't think there's a fair answer. I said we should work towards that, is what I said.
Okay, so
You know
if
what I mean?
you say we
I
should
think
work
there's
towards
injustice
it,
no matter what. I mean,
I'm
like,
with you.
we keep bringing it back to the DEI lens.
No, you brought up Dr. King, and
100%.
when you bring up Dr. King, I'm obligated. I'm obligated to ask you that question because that's the politics. To a community over here, that's the politics.
But I mean,
you're using King's words
100%.
to dismantle DEI.
I'd say that's 100% not true.
But you're using it. You're using his words. DEI was for us to get to that point, but you're against DEI. You're saying
that's not at all I'm saying. I
the
said upward economic mobility. I think that's the most important thing. I think no matter who you are, there's poor people. No matter what race, color, gender, creed here in Erie County, I think you focus on the entire spectrum of poverty. You uplift entire
Which is
groups
actually,
of
I
people.
think, what goes on here in this place. I think East Erie, East Side Renaissance is about working entrepreneurially to raise up this corridor and to make a difference, because that's what is lasting in terms of making a difference. It doesn't mean that I pretend that there is an injustice, or I pretend that we've reached a point in American society where there is no racism, where it's not systemic. I don't hear you saying that you're doing that.
Well, I just think to Marc's point, we're never going to agree because that's such an arbitrary concept. That lens looks different to every single person. I mean, he could ask me or ask your IT guy, or we could ask Doug. I mean, to me, I think it's just a disingenuous question from the sense of like, do I think? Like, it doesn't matter what I think. Why? Because one, I have the bully pulpit. Two, I have my retirement. I have my financial trajectory. What this is about is sending the elevator back down and creating as many opportunities. Do I think as county executive, I don't care if you're able to resurrect Dr. King himself and put him in this seat, that he single-handedly could right these wrongs, or at least to a point where everybody agreed on it. I don't, like, again, it goes back to, I don't think you can get everybody to agree on a single place to go out of four of us sitting here at this table.
It's not so much that, and we keep talking about it. I'm not even talking about it right now, but it's not so much that we're talking about whether we agree. We're voting for the county exec, and there's a community out here who want to know what's your opinion on that and that issue. And you answered it, right? Whether we agree or not, that's irrelevant. But what you think is very important
100%.
to those, because
and
you took credit for your homeless project
100%.
or whatever. So some communities look at you and say, well, maybe you can solve certain things. Maybe you can solve certain things that way, as you took the approach to homeless and nursing or whatever that. I wanted to ask you another question, though, not DEI related. As a politician type person that help people run campaigns, I want to get into your campaign. How did you pick your opponent per se? As far as you seemed, I would have thought, and I like these type of talks. We're off the clock. How did you dismiss Perry Wood, and your campaign kind of focused on your current person? And I would have thought that Perry Wood would have been. How did you decide that she was more of the person to focus on than Perry Wood?
Well, I mean,
you smiling too.
100%. Yeah.
I wish the public could see this.
Well,
smile.
There's one thing I've learned. There's one thing I've learned in the military is, like, one, I'm never going to discuss my battlefield strategy. I said, but two, I think that should tell people that at the end of the day, these Democrats are playing chess or playing checkers, and I'm playing chess. It's really about truly understanding the demographic and who's most dangerous. I think my current opponent has very little understanding of county government, whether you like me or not. I am that proven, seasoned leader that can get stuff done.
Who was not that when you took office, and so
Vogel
would be the.
But I would argue against that. I mean, if you were to compare, even replace Vogel with Tyler Titus, I would still argue that, like, our life experiences are completely different.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, running 3 pizza places that the government has funded at the tune of $1 million and 33% of your businesses have already failed is nowhere near the experience that I had. And I can tell you saw the uphill battle, and we've talked about it, and I battle it every day. It comes down to personality. It comes down to presence. It comes down to contacts. And I would even argue this. I mean, to Marc's point, politics matter. They do matter. And with Donald Trump in the White House, if you think my opponent can walk into this office and get anything out of the Trump White House where I can, it's going to sell our community short for a long time. You know, I've got a lot. I mean, mind you, I usually take about 4 trips a year to the White House. I did very well with the Biden White House as well. You know, showing up and playing ball on a field with a lot of the bigger dogs and audiences where Erie County never had an audience, even with a former congresswoman as our county executive. I've been able to exceed those metrics. You know, so I mean, to me, that military leadership at a higher level, that's prepared me, I think, to beat these folks on a political battlefield, but also to outmaneuver and get ourselves into rooms with places like Buffalo or Denver or Miami. I mean, Miami's budget is $9 billion a year. Why is the county executive Erie, Pennsylvania, in a room with Miami or Houston or Seattle? But we are, because I put us in that driver's seat.
And I don't disagree that having the courage to step into those forums is a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, and it may
or a
well
fool's
be.
errand, depending on how you look at it.
And sometimes it is, but you still take the steps.
Do you see yourself as a reformist?
100%.
Because
100%.
Because that's what it sounds like.
100%.
It seems like there's the way we're used to doing it.
Yep.
And then you came in as a candidate, and now you've seen the system, and you're saying this is not what that says.
Yep.
And you're using your.
Let's even go one further, because I mean, like the point that you're bringing up is very perceptive, and the fact most people I don't think look at it to really understand. So I mean, to me, I didn't come into office to play this game. Like, I didn't come here to just twiddle my thumbs and collect a salary. Like, I came here to change it because I saw it was messed up before I even sought this office. Not only trying to change the game, but you have to look at the form of government that we've had for the last 25 years. When people want to say, like, oh, Davis and all this drama, I mean, even my opponent runs on this. We end the drama. Okay, well, I mean, maybe you just moved here from Chicago and you haven't been here for the last 25 years. Kathy Dahlkemper had Carl Anderson, and those two fought like cats and dogs, and it was the same drama. You know, and even before Carl Anderson, there was a Fiore Leone that was on the tail of people for 40 years. And, you know, Fiore Leone backed my candidacy as a Democrat. You know, I seek counsel from Fiore quite a bit when I'm like, what is the history behind this? How did we get where we're going? Like, how did you arrive to this? What was the foundation, the principles? Who was the players? You know, so, I mean, the idea that this is going to be a utopic world simply because you elect a Democrat, the drama is going to stop is naive. It is never going to happen. I mean, look at Governor Shapiro. He's a widely popular Democratic governor with a divided legislature. And look, we don't have a budget for what? What are we, 60 some days overdue, 62 days or whatever it is now? So, I mean, it's a game of moving goalposts. That's kind of like live and die by the sword of politics. But to me, 100%, I'm here to change the game for the positive. Like, I'm not here to waste my time. I'm not here to collect a paycheck, you know, but I'm going to tell you one thing, if anybody that's out there listening, you don't have to like me. But the reality is that I truly have the best nature in mind when it comes to what's best for a community. And I've shown that I'll work with anybody. And at the end of the day, your plan has to pencil out on paper. The money that I was able to claw back and invest in all 38 municipalities, we took $6 million and turned it into $43+ million of funding for infrastructure projects in all 38 communities.
Let's bring the program to a close and say thank you to Brenton.
Absolutely.
And to Doug for coming and being here and conversing with us. Maybe on the other side of the November election, we get a chance to do this again.
That's all for our show today. Tune in next time for more discussion and analysis with local and national guests. Remember that Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN PBS NPR, which is 91.3 FM. If you want to leave a message, comment, or suggestion for the show, call the Next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. I am Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.